So Unit 7.2, Part 2. The Third French Republic. If you remember where we left off with France, we left off with Napoleon III being captured, which successfully ended the Second French Republic. We left off with OVB, Otto von Bismarck in Germany, being dismissed from his position, and Wilhelm II is going to just destroy all of the chess moves that OVB made. We're going to see that the First Republic, if you remember, was under Robespierre. So that was our First Republic. The Second Republic was in 1848. And now we're in our Third Republic. So here we go. And then they're going to have more after. We'll just keep changing governments in France. So the Paris Commune, 1870 to 1871 is our first big event here. With Napoleon gone, there's not really a government to per se. What the Germans want, what OVB wants, is, remember, he wants to be harsh with France, and so he needs someone to make a peace treaty with, so he kind of forces them to form a government. Napoleon's gone, he's been captured, there's not a republic to come home to, so we'll see the empire collapse and Germany become a country, and like, whoa, like, I'm not cool with you just getting off with this, so you better, like, pick a guy to put in charge, because we need to make a peace treaty, and we are going to treat you pretty harshly, so why don't you just send a guy up here? So they'll form a new National Assembly in 1871 to 1875, so you can see how long this government's going to last, like, super long, 4 years in France, that's a long time. It was created with its chief executive, Adolphe Thiers, and he is going to be our leader here. And he's, I guess what you could describe as, he is kind of going to be conservative. He wants to be powerful. The people that put him in charge want a powerful, strong leader. They've kind of had all this crazy revolution stuff, and they're just like, we have a lot of, like, monarchists and stuff to the side. What's going to happen is the Paris Commune is going to be like, no. Like, we need this revolution stuff to continue. They want a radical communist government, so we start to see, just like we had left off in Germany, some socialist uprising here. And they're going to lay siege to Paris. So with number 3, please just circle Paris. Only to Paris. They're going to lay siege to Paris. Like, you literally have to go through gates. And one of the pro-Paris Commune people is going to leave the gate open. And, yeah, it's like, hey, I didn't think I'll latch this. And they just all come rushing in. And so you need to know that the Paris Commune were radical communists. Okay? Kind of like the Jacobins. Okay, during the French Revolution is what I would compare them to. Pretty extreme, pretty revolutionary. And after the peace treaty with Prussia, the Paris Commune is going to say, no, I refuse to accept this peace treaty, first of all, because I don't recognize this government. Second of all, I'm not coming to terms. I hate Germans. I don't want to come to peace terms with them. They shouldn't be able to tell me what the peace terms in. So they refuse to accept it and refuse to accept the authority of the newly formed National Assembly. So we have some turmoil right off the bat with our Third French Republic here. So Marx is, like, really excited. What does he think is going to happen? Here's this really extreme group of radicalists that have now broken into Paris. What does he say that the workers of the world should do? Rise up and overthrow. So he's like, oh my gosh, it's happening in my lifetime. He's, like, so excited to the side, like, freaking out. And so he really thinks this is going to happen. A lot of people think that this is going to happen. It's very anti-French, or anti-German, very patriotic, very communist, this movement, this Paris Commune. So from March 21st to May of 1871, the Paris Commune will fight a bloody struggle, okay, with the troops of the National Assembly. We're going to see it's pretty easy. Yes, ma'am. Yes, only within Paris. They're only attacking the National Assembly, which is housed in Paris. What we're going to see is it's really easy to fight. Why do you think it's so easy now? What have we done to Paris? That on one hand seemed like a good idea with bloodshed, but might not be such a good idea now. Yes, ma'am. We widened all the streets so the people of Paris cannot build barricades to protect themselves. So the Paris Commune just keeps coming in, killing everyone they come across pretty much in Paris. Thousands will die in this civil war, and 20,000 will be subsequently executed. It's a quote from this time period that said no one in Paris was innocent. So everyone was looked at kind of guilty here. So Thiers' defeat of the Paris Commune and other firm measures will lead France on the road to recovery. So ultimately, the new National Assembly is going to be able to beat back this Paris Commune. They'll execute 20,000 of them. And at first the people are going to be like, okay, like I guess you showed us this revolution needs to stop. And it looks like we're going to recover in France. It looks like it. A little bit of spoiler alert there for you, though. So we've kind of have some hatred going into this Third French Republic. And it will finally be established in 1875. So you just need to know, my only reason for telling you this is we don't have a clean start to our Third French Republic. It's going to be kind of nasty. So the Third French Republic is going to be largely dominated by the bourgeoisie. We're going to see that France will enjoy periods of economic prosperity during this time because of the middle-class bourgeoisie. A constitution will be provided for a republic. It will have a chamber of deputies, which has the most power, and it, of course, was elected by universal suffrage, because that's what we have in France. The president was kept weak, and the Senate was indirectly elected. Okay, so kind of like our Senate was originally, kind of kept to not have as much power. Leon Gambetta is going to lead the Republicans during the early years of the Republic, and he will establish parliamentary supremacy while preaching equality of opportunity. We will see some reforms put into place during this time. Trade unions will be fully legalized. Remember Napoleon III had kind of suppressed those. We talked about the Ferry Laws just briefly, but this is where Jules Ferry and the Ferry Laws about education will come in. Remember, the reason they educate people now is not because they just really want everyone to have a happy education, but why? Yeah, they have to vote, so they better be literate. And also they want to socialize the children and teach them how to be good little French children. Isn't school where you learn how to be good little soldiers, little individuals, how to raise your hand, how to ask to use the bathroom, how to do things you never do in normal life? There you go. That's okay. You're an adult. I don't ask to go to the bathroom. So, during the Third Republic, the French government, however, is going to fall dozens of times. So go ahead and circle number 5. We just can't seem to get it together in France. They're just going to be a multi-party system. We're going to just see they can keep throwing each other apart. Challenge to the Republic is going to come from the right and the left. So they can't, they're fighting each other. And then the third party, they don't agree on the third party. It's just like always a mess. We're going to have the Boulanger crisis, where George Boulanger, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but plots a coup to overthrow the Republic. The Republic summoned Boulanger to trial, but he flees to Belgium. So they're like, you're trying to commit treason. He flees to Belgium. He commits suicide on his ex-lover's grave. Yeah, I think that's just artful. His fall and failure will make the other French people go, oh, see, we're like good. Like our republic's good. Looks like guy tried this little coup and then went and killed himself on his, like, we're just going to be successful. There'll be the Panama scandal. We won't go into a bunch of detail there, but the biggest thing is the Dreyfus Affair in 1894. So please circle D. You need to know what the Dreyfus Affair is. It will come up on the AP exam in some form, I am sure. And it's the most serious threat to the Republic. This pretty much almost undoes the Republic. What happens is there is a general named Captain Alfred Dreyfus. He is Jewish. He is of Jewish descent. There's someone supplying secrets to the Germans. Okay, we will not find out, spoiler alert, whom until later. But who they blame is Alfred Dreyfus. Because they hate the Germans and they're kind of afraid of outsiders. All of the evidence is circumstantial. What they find is a crumpled up letter in a German diplomat's trash can. They're like, that's his handwriting. Okay? It's never anything proved. That's his handwriting. He's arrested and put on trial for treason. This trial brings out all kinds of xenophobia. You can just see from the court documents fear of outsiders, fear of course, the French being Catholic, a prejudice against Jews. He's got to be guilty. He's a Jew, is even a statement that was made in the court files. He is stripped of his commission, and he is going to be sentenced to solitary confinement on an island called Devil's Island. Like, that would just freak me out in my court papers. Like, you're going to Devil's Island. It's off the coast of South America, by the way, if you were wondering. And so he's sent there. What's going to happen while he's in this very long confinement period is secrets are still getting to the Germans. So it's like, oh, wow, he must be doing it from this little island off South America. So
that would be the logical,
yeah, no, he's there. What happens, though, is the government actually is looking into it, but they don't want to let on that they could have made a mistake. Okay, so he's in solitary confinement. It's going to kind of tear the country apart because you're going to see it from two sides. Eventually, the newspaper reporters are going to dig enough, and they're going to find out that there's this other guy who's been arrested. I mean, this stuff is still going on, so it obviously can't be Dreyfus, and it's going to cause this huge stir. So because the army discovers the real thing. However, they do catch the other, like, it's not just circumstantial evidence. Like, they catch him in the act, and he is acquitted, just to protect their reputation, and they keep Dreyfus in solitary confinement. And personal rant, Dreyfus's only granddaughter dies while he's in solitary confinement away. So, like, oh, that's sad. So Emile, this is where Emile Zola jumps in. You should remember him as our realist author, and he's going to take up Dreyfus's case with his pen, with his what would be his sword as a writer, and he condemns the military in his famous newspaper article defending Dreyfus in 1898 called J'accuse, which means I accuse. So yeah, I accuse the government of doing wrong, and he is actually going to have to flee then, because he's accused of libel. If you don't know what libel is, that means making false statements. So he's accused of libel. He flees. He will eventually get to come back. But what really all of this is important is if you skip down to the underlined stuff that I gave you, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th and 6th bullet point there. The Dreyfus affair is actually going to lead to an alliance between moderate Republicans and socialists because it splits the country in half. So you're going to see people ally. Who did we leave in power in Germany when we left off with that lecture? Wilhelm II, and who did he allow rise to power? Who was Bismarck trying to keep down? The socialists. So now who do we have rising to power in France? The socialists. So you might want to be keeping an eye on the socialists. There you go. Maybe by the third time we'd all get that down. So conservatives in the military and church were thoroughly discredited. So this is a huge impact on our republic. Socialists led by Jean Jaurès are going to gain seats in the Chamber of Deputies from 1905 to 1914, and by 1914 the Third Republic enjoyed vast support of the French people, okay, under the socialists. So that is where we're going to leave off in France on the eve. So who's rising to power in France on the eve of World War? The socialists. Who do we leave in power in Germany on the eve? So there we go. Now Great Britain is always the exception to the rule. So let's get to Great Britain, our little teapot. They like their tea. So Queen Victoria is still kicking it, guys. 1837 to 1901. I have found the coolest game about Victorian England that I'm putting a motto for you to play. What? Well, maybe not as fun as yours. So to me, it was fun. It's about your knowledge of the Victorian age in England. But, so we're now in Great Britain. The period between 1850 and 1865 is going to see realignment of political parties. We've already talked about these parties. Lord Palmerston and Henry John Temple, the Whig Prime Minister and dominant political figure in England between 1850 and 1865. We still have power in the upper classes till 1911. We're going to see that. Remember, we've talked about 1911 before. That is when the House of Commons is going to rise. And they're going to get salaries, and so we'll get to that in just a second. Really what you just need to know, though, is circle number 2 and number 3. We're going to see, instead of a 3-party system like France, that 2 parties are going to go back and forth and back and forth. But it's not so much fighting like in France. It's like, hey, chap, it's my turn to be in charge. And then, oh, friendly chap, why don't you step up and take charge?
See, you say that. Have you seen the videos of like British Parliament
Yeah,
nowadays?
Oh my gosh,
They
yes.
brawl.
Brawl.
They do, yeah.
Yes. Have you seen the Canadian Parliament?
Yeah, that's even worse. And Australian.
I will have to tell you what I got. I got up at 3. We will watch them. I have some actually. Yeah, because when we get to these part of parliaments, you need to see it in action.
Yeah.
It is. I have the best one ever. Okay, so we'll get there. I have them all saved. There's some good ones.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. There are times that when I see it like come up on DVR and I hear a little bloop in my living room, it's 2 in the morning. I'll still get up and go in. So the Tory party was transformed into the Conservative Party. So you need to know the Tories that we've been talking about will now be called the Conservative Party. I will try to ease your mind and call it both like I'm doing right now for a little while until you adjust to this drastic change, okay? Benjamin Disraeli is going to be our leader of this party. He is the only prime minister to this day with Jewish heritage and as a prime minister in Britain. So, pretty cool there. And then the Whig Party is going to transform into the Liberal Party. So same thing. I'll try to say both of them together. Under William Gladstone or Gladstone, heard it both ways. He's going to. Okay, Gladstone we're sticking with. All right. He will be prime minister a couple times as well. John Bright, a manufacturer you kind of need to know, is lurking in the background behind the Liberal Party, behind the Whig Party. He is a manufacturer, an anti-corn law advocate, and a leader of the Manchester School. This isn't an actual, school. The Manchester School is a school of thought, like a philosophy. It's very laissez-faire, like government. What I would say we're libertarians today. It's that school of thought, like, you back your hands off government and stay, as long as I'm not hurting someone else, my liberty should be protected. So he's behind the scene, funding the Whig Party at this time, just to let you know. So, after 1865, we are going to see that Britain saw expanded democracy under Disraeli and Gladstone, who were political opponents. That just means they're going to get more people to vote. We're going to see more and more people. Because remember, Britain's not like France right now. We've only got 1/8 of our individuals able to vote because there's still property mandates. Not like France that has universal male suffrage right now. So, Disraeli is going to argue for aggressive foreign policy, expansion of the British Empire, which is imperialism, and reluctantly supported democratic reforms. So this guy wasn't all let's give them all the right to vote. He's like, what do I have to do to get people to vote for me? So so it's reluctantly that he does that. Kind of weird. I find it weird that he writes a novel as he writes a novel about sympathy for the working class. So he writes this novel called Sybil, and it's about working class mothers who, what do you do with your rowdy children? So it was about this drug that they called Laundrum, and it was, try to get this right, it wasn't milk, it was alcohol and opium mixed together, so then the babies would not be throwing a fit at work, so you could carry them and still work. And a kid once said to me, when your mom puts whiskey in your bottle, I was like, I don't know, my mom never put whiskey. I don't know. I've heard an old wife tell that that's good for teething, but I've never heard of whiskey full dump
One part whiskey, 2 parts skim milk.
Yeah. But I was like, oh sure. And so he writes this book in kind of sympathy. So you can see the woman there, yeah. See, I got to keep the child quiet while I'm at work, but he doesn't really come up with an answer for it, but he writes this sympathetic novel about it. I just find it kind of an odd part of his history. He was influenced also by John Stuart Mill. If you remember, Mill believes in what philosophy? Close to pragmatism, but go a step further. Starts with a U. Utilitarianism. So he wants the greatest good for the greatest number. So Disraeli's very impacted by this. We will see in the 1830s and 1840s what group had said, please give us all the right to vote. Here's our little papers. Here's our wheelbarrows full of stuff. Parliament, please. What group was that in Britain that always asked for the right to vote? Very calm, never uproared, kept getting petitions, starts with a C.
Catholics.
They brought, because these papers are called charter, yeah, Chartists. They're like, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. So they've been there to the side. Because of this competition between conservatives and liberals, they're going to just be like, I'll give this people the right to vote, I'll give this. So it's because of competition. The Chartists think it's because of them. But poor, yeah, kind of, you get a vote, yeah. So the Reform Bill of 1867 was Disraeli's leap into the dark. Really, he took a leap of faith. Like, I don't know what'll happen if I let all these stupid people vote, but let's let them vote. Like, that's kind of what he said to his colleagues. Let's just see what happens. To appeal to the working people, it redistributed seats to provide more equitable representation in the House of Commons. So that's a good thing. Almost all men over 21 in the cities. So circle urban. So just draw a line that says cities. We're not in the countryside yet. They still think country folk ain't cityfied enough to have the vote. It fell short of universal suffrage, but we went from 1/8 to about 1/3 of people, if you want to write that there, if you're keeping track of the numbers. About 1/8 to 1/3. Reduced government regulation of trade unions, created government regulations for improved sanitation. That's good because we want to get cholera kept out of England. And then William Gladstone, our liberal, is going to become the most important liberal figure in the 19th century. So like I said, they go back and forth. He supported, later, the Irish Home Rule, which we're going to end this lecture on, fiscal policy, free trade, and extension of democratic principles while opposing imperialism. So you can see the difference in platform, although they're going to banter kind of back and forth. He abolished compulsory taxes to support the Church of England. People still had to pay tithes to the church, even if they weren't a member of that church, so he gets rid of that. He gave the Australian Ballot Act, which means that your ballots became secret. We just take advantage of that. But if you were in England before and you were poor and you now have the right to vote, what could your rich boss do? Check what you vote and be like, you might not have a job tomorrow if you don't vote for the guy I want. And so they shut this down. Civil service reform, so you have to take an exam to get a civil, like I have to take a test to become several tests to become a teacher. Postman, my husband has a test, feels like every week. Yes? It has to do with the adoption of some of the Australian principalities and trying to run things from afar, and like people trying to coerce those. Let's see. What was it? Reform Act of 1884 is going to be the Representation of the People Act. It granted suffrage to adult males in the counties on the same basis as in the boroughs. So now we're starting to move out of the cities just a little bit towards the country folk. And so we're going to see this brought Britain closer to universal male suffrage. We're at 70% here. So 70% of people in 1884. What they do is they kind of, what? Of males still. Yep, we're getting to women in just a second. Good clarification. They're going to get rid of the property thing, but you still have to have like a property value. So as long as your rent costs more than £10 a month, then you could vote. So they're like, you have to show you have some kind of money in class, but you don't have to actually own your abode. Now you can rent. And so that will kind of in 1918 be the property qualifications there. So we have Gladstone. This is his platform. These are some of the reforms he does. He will be prime minister 4 times. He gets the title Grand Old Man from that. And Disraeli, who's probably the only un-British, oh, chap thing, he takes the GOM, the Grand Old Man, and he starts calling him God's only mistake. And so that's one of this is a huge deal then, because it totally, this was not something you didn't slander other opponents at the time, and so this becomes kind of a huge deal for Disraeli. During the 1880s and 1890s, new groups emerged trying to extend democracy. This includes, thank you for setting us up, Matt, women's suffrage advocates, and anti-imperialist socialists and anti-nationalists. This is where we get the Fabian Society. Does anyone know who the Roman general Fabius was? Anybody up on their Roman history? You want to tell me what he was famous for? You got it.
Fabia Questarton, you know her. She's the NPR reporter. And
Don't know her
I
personally.
thought I heard somebody else.
Okay, that's right. So Fabius was a Roman general who was very well known for his delay tactics. He had strategy, and he would always put things off. And so the Fabian Society in 1883 is one of the most significant of these groups looking for democracy. They are actually reformist or revisionist Marxists. So these would be people that would freak Marx out, except he's dead now. 1883, Marx dies. You know, like only 12 people show up to his funeral. So either he outlived all of his friends, or he became very unpopular because there hadn't been the workers' revolt yet, and people thought he lied. But yeah, it's kind of weird with all of the influence he had. But anyway, the Fabian Society were revisionist Marxists. They think that you could get political democracy and economic socialism together without class conflict. Like, you can just keep giving people more right to vote, and gradually, if you get more and more workers to vote, then the whole thing will change. So this is not what Marx envisioned at all. This is like this is where England puts their teapot thing. Like, they even calm communists down. They're like, whoa, if you just vote, man, like, it's gonna be okay. Like, so this is the difference between France, 20,000 people executed and thousands of them killed in the streets. England, let's just all vote, man. Like, it's gonna be alright. So, in 1893, Keir Hardie led the Independent Labour Party that rapidly became a vocal third party. So we do see a rise of Labour Party in England, while we see the rise in France and Germany. And it attracted Unionists, Socialists, and those who thought the Conservative and Liberal parties had no interest. But we still stay very English. It's still very cooperative. Still very, yeah. So, oh, there's the Fabians. There's, if you wanted to see what they look like, here's some of their flyers. Fabian Society, labor rallies. 1905 to 1920s, the Liberal Party is going to advance aggressive social and economic programs. We see the Parliament Act of 1911, which will be the most significant political reform during Liberal Party rule. It eliminated, this is circle this date. Remember when I kind of previewed it when we left off with England last time? This is where the House of Commons takes over the House of Lords. It eliminated the powers of the House of Lords and that cannot stop the House of Commons now. You know, they've only legitimately tried to stop them 2 times since this was enacted, and the House of Commons have kind of stomped over them. Lifespan of Parliament was reduced from 7 to 5 years, so we have a reduction in time of power. We'll see the foundations for social welfare created. Who was the first to do this? Social welfare. Germany. Now England, and we'll be behind all of these. Guarantee each citizen with a decent standard of living. Right of unions, government insurance. We've already talked about social welfare. It's supposed to even out things. Compulsory school attendance, taxes increased. You guys should know by right now in modern Europe, this social welfare stuff is not going too well for them. They're about 50 years ahead of us. Unfortunately, I think the gap and the problems that it causes, we're catching up with, like, very quickly. But like, I remember with Kate and William's wedding, those students were protesting in the street because they were actually going to start charging a little bit for college tuition in England. We see that they tried they tried to take the 6-week vacation that you're mandated down to 5, and people rioted. So it's become very much an expectation, and this caused some tension now. Representation of the People Act for us ladies, women over 30, because you can't trust any women under 30, get the right to vote in 1918, and all men will gain suffrage. So you need to circle 1918, the Representation of the People Act. This is where all male universal suffrage happens, and women over the age of 30. Yeah, and they could be crazy. They don't have a man to help them pick. I mean, okay. So women's rights and suffrage movement in England. Initially, women sought to amend marriage and property laws like that. They were going to be pretty happy with that. Like, let me have some property. Let me get divorced if I want to. And then they're going to realize very quickly that this isn't enough. Like, they still don't have enough say. I want you to write right here, though, like I wrote middle class for suffragettes. It's the middle class women that have time to worry about this. The working class women are worried about doping their babies up so they can get through the workday. Okay, like it's middle class women that drive this. They benefited from education. They were exposed to it. They had servants, so women had time to become activists. And working class women and socialists distrusted the middle class and worked toward their goals independently. So we're going to see kind of a divide even with women. So first is Millicent Garrett Fawcett. She is going to be the leader of the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. That's a mouthful, the NUWSS, which is even worse to say. So they are very peaceful, right? Peaceful, peace sign next to this. They demanded that Parliament grant female suffrage. When I say demand, like they would go like with her little signs and all be law-abiding and peaceful. And this doesn't work. They helped to grow the suffrage movement, and she was knighted in 1924, but they're very peaceful. It's not really working. It's kind of like they spend their afternoons doing this, then go have tea, and like it's not really getting a lot done. So some other suffragettes will come on the scene. Emmeline Pankhurst is the most famous. She's infuriated that Parliament would not give females the vote, even though women in Finland gained this right in 1906 and in Norway in 1913. And along with her daughter, she is going to found the Women's Social and Political Union, a little bit easier to say, WSPU, based on militant principles. They undertook violent activities, such as destroying railroad stations, works of art, store windows. Like, they make it very visible. So it's like, hey, we are women, see us roar, not just hear us roar. They chained themselves to gates in front of Parliament, and they went on hunger strikes. And what's kind of sick about this is the male police would then take them into custody and force feed them until they were healthy enough again, and then release them, because it was just uncouth to let a woman suffer, but yet they force fed them, which was kind of torture. So yeah, kind of odd there. Cat and Mouse Act is what that was called. Like, they starve, we forced them to eat, release them, those kind of things. The most notorious militant action occurred when Emily Davidson committed suicide unintentionally, they say. I don't know how she thought this was unintentional, because this is down here. If I can, yes, and the video's on Edmodo for you. It's rather disturbing. She jumps from out behind this gate in front of the King's horse at a race, and she is killed to call attention to the suffragettes' cause. And it does. I mean, it's very successful, and it brings attention to the world. And in the Representation of the People Act of 1918, as a result of these women's contributions, we will see the right to vote. Yes, ma'am. No, I mean, no, see, like, all of the people. Yeah, I mean, like, it was a very, like, you're right up on the track. And she just, you watch it in the video, it shows it several times. I mean, it's very, like, it kind of takes you back. I don't know how she thought that wouldn't, I mean, it's almost immediate. It's a charging horse in a race. To King's horse, no, it hits the ground as well. And so the Reform Act of 1928 will give suffrage for women over 21, so we will decrease the age a little bit. Last is the Irish question, which we need to address here. Those are 2 acts that I typed in your notes. So the Irish question, just like we had Young Italy, just like we've had the revolutionary movements, there is going to be a movement in Ireland in 1848. So kind of harkening back to where we were with everything else, 1848 on, we need to bring Ireland up to World War I. 1801, we became the United Kingdom, and so the Irish question was really, bless you, the most recurring and serious problem, bless you, Britain faced from 1890 to 1914, which is the idea that Ireland should have its total independence, although we're going to have some problems with that because there are some Irish that don't want this to happen, so even they are divided. It's a nationalist movement. Gladstone, our prime minister, had actually unsuccessfully pushed for Irish Home Rule, which wasn't total independence, but was like Ireland should get to kind of rule themselves independently. Ulster, the Protestant counties in North Ireland, are going to be our holdup. They oppose removing themselves from Great Britain, from the United Kingdom, because they started to enjoy the economic successes they had as part of it. They start to associate themselves as part of this and not identify themselves as just separately Irish. And so the implementation of this Irish home rule is going to be delayed because something's going to happen. What's the big thing that's getting ready to happen? World War I is going to divert a little bit of attention of England away. And so the English think we can put this on the back burner, but there are going to be some Irish individuals that say we cannot. And there's this called the Easter Rebellion in Dublin. They think that, well, this is a perfect time. The British are all off across the English Channel fighting in trenches. We will just go ahead and fight for our independence. What they underestimate is what Britain is willing to do to keep them. And they come back over from the mainland, send troops, and squash this rebellion. In 1922, after World War I, just jumping ahead a little bit, we will see Ireland gain independence, but Northern Ireland, the places that wanted to stay, will remain part of the British Empire. And there's still we talked about this at the beginning of the year. We were talking about the news. There's still problems there today. There was a little interim of time, like in my lifespan and probably very early in yours when Clinton was president, that there were not so many problems for a little while, but they still exist. Yes, ma'am. Mhm. Great, yeah.
Crazy violent,
Mhm.
like military, like all up in Ulster, Derry.
Mhm.
Like,
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being young. I remember the election for Clinton. I remember the tone in my house changed. Like I remember my parents even speaking about it and understood enough as a kid that like the things on the news changed and things were different and they like
Yeah, Clinton killed
mhm,
it.
yeah. And then
Swag.
after it was almost like yeah, we're still talking about it today. So dang, Clinton not keeping his other stuff together. But that's the Irish question. We're going to come back to it after World War I. But like I said, my goal is to get us all up to World War I in every country so that we can just move seamlessly. Any questions that need to make the podcast for Nathan before we move
Hey,
into work
Nathan.
time?
Happy birthday.
Oh, he left for his birthday? Like, this would be a perfect day to bring cake in. Like,
It wasn't all like that.
oh, so delayed. I see.
Tommy, say bye.